In stream. Well, I mean, if we stream, I should be able to go to download it, so we should be cool. Do you still have recording on your end?
Yeah, I just turned on
Okay,
audio
good.
hijack,
Excellent, Matt
and
Ray. That way, if in case it fucks up, you we can
yeah,
we
yeah.
can
All right, audio hijack is doing something.
we can fix these guys. How do I? Oh, there we go. I gotta fix. This is 340.
Recording Samsung G Track Pro plus Google Chrome to 3 outputs.
G-Track
Exciting.
Pro,
Yeah,
and I've got
exciting.
this festive little background too. You see that?
Yeah, I think that's the Brandon's Away background.
Uh,
Oh, we're streaming. Watch now. You know
yeah.
I'm joining that one.
Is that in Twitch?
Look, it's me.
All right. I'm trying to look up our YouTube account to make sure it's going to that. Software
Okay.
defined talk.
Twitter. Oh, look at that. We hit the Twitter.
Oh, no, Brandon's not in this one. All right, hold on. One more check here. Ah, yeah. I've more or less decided I'm going to stop streaming for work, Matt Ray, and
Oh,
I've
wow.
never
Me
felt
too.
better. I don't mind this kind of streaming, but like for work, I just like, even here, I don't like doing it, but I don't really like talking to the streamers,
I
and
think my
that's
new
what
job.
that's. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. I was like, I'm not looking for a DevRel job.
Yeah, yeah,
At
yeah,
least not specifically.
and
I don't mind doing some, but I don't want to do it full time.
yeah, I don't know if this is like self-imposed ageism or just like my predilections, but like I don't want to do that. Like I'll broadcast some video, but like whenever we talk internally about how to get better, how to increase our streaming blah 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 strategy points, I don't even know. Like, there's always the usual discussion of like, oh, you've got to engage with the users, and then at the end, you want to do a raid where you send your audience to another channel, and then you can interact with them. And it's all towards getting more followers and eyeballs. But like, I don't know. I don't think the people I talk with like even have a Twitch account. Like
Yeah.
I was talking with a bunch of like SVPs and CIO types yesterday in London. I should have asked them like, how many times have you watched a live stream? That's what I need to start doing that. And I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I was in a Discord today,
Uh,
and they were like, we're moving to Slack because enterprises don't do Discord.
yeah, yeah, I could. That's an interesting point. Huh.
Oh boy.
I'm doing
Yeah.
the ultimate work at home dad thing. I'm eating my 2-year-old daughter's, well, she's almost 2, leftover moist cereal that she had mixed with yogurt. I can't resist.
Really? I can resist.
I guess I could resist, but I'm giving in. I'm deciding not to resist. Yeah, and I just can't imagine being like, well, hot dog head explosion 37. When you're negotiating with corporate finance about your annual budgeting cycle, one of the things you want to do is establish a lean growth board, which, if you've read up on the safe finance options, is similar, but you really need to make sure that you have one team involved there. So I hope that helps you out at your Fortune 500 company, Hot Dog Head Explosion 37, and come back again and tell us how it's working out. Which is not to demean, like, the audience of
Hot
streamers
dogs.
and stuff. I just think it's different subject matters, right? Like it's different
Yeah.
d- different
Yeah.
likes for
Yeah.
different folks.
Well, and like even the sorts of companies I'm talking to, I'm like, you know, super enterprisey stuff.
You sound
You know,
excited about it, Matt Ray.
well, there was a thread in our thing where somebody was like, there needs to be a SaaS for enterprise payments or something, and somebody's like, that sounds super boring. I was like, I'd do it. People pay.
Yeah, and
Like,
also like the
I mean,
other
enterprise software is boring.
I can't remember the name of it, but that already exists. Like that was a whole like back in the first wave of cloud stuff. That was a whole category of cloud things in 2020,
Is it built into
2009
like
and 2010.
one of the CRM tools or something? Somebody like that bought it up.
Yeah, someone might have. I remember we used to look at it every now and then. It has a name that if I could remember, you would be like, "Oh yeah, those guys." But they maybe it's not what they were talking about. It wasn't managing your SaaS bills. It was doing SaaS billing.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a different thing. I thought this was for like vendors to build their. I thought it was like B2B.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. It's
okay.
like white labeling SaaS billing. Just like
Yeah.
just like, the equivalent of like getting a little terminal. Well, you wouldn't do that for B2B, but like, having FreshBooks, but just like
Right. Or having like
man,
Shopify for enterprise.
what was the name of this thing? Not Baron Venture Harbor.
Yeah, I
SaaS
could totally
Dude.
see somebody like Salesforce just scooping that up.
Yeah, they should. I flew on BA and they used a a Lightning or Force.com app for me to upload my coronavirus stuff. So
I'm out of lockdown tomorrow, or out of isolation tomorrow. My daughter had COVID, so
the COVID.
hopefully she'll pass her test in the morning.
I wonder if they just renamed themselves to ChargeBee. Anyways, all right. Well, I don't think we're gonna have that many audience members today, Matt Ray.
Yeah, there's 2 now.
Yeah, hot dog head
Are you the
explosion
other one?
37. I'm gonna rename myself to that.
What wasn't that Merlin Mann's handle?
Yeah,
It was like
he's
Hot Dog Ladies Man.
Hot dog ladies. Yeah, but yes, I still
Yeah.
think it's a good idea.
But the thing is, you're gonna log back in to like your Twitch into the enterprise VPs, and you'll be like, I'm your host, exploding hot dog.
Explode. Oh yeah, I'm your host.
Well, that sounds much worse.
Exploding. Exploding isn't spelled LOAD in the middle. All right. See, this is because I'm editing. I'm going to put the full mood board in. Brandon always edits those out, which I don't know why.
I know. There's always some gems in there.
Maybe that. Yeah. Anyways.
Last episode he got me excited. I thought the name of the episode was going to be the Gnome Plan, and then that was taken out.
Exploding hot dog man. Yep. Okay. I'll start here. Ready? We have 2 ads.
Do you camel case, or is it hot dog head explosion? That's better.
37. because someone else already had that name.
Because the first 36 were taken. Oh my goodness.
Their abandoned account, but just like in 2009 is really the scramble for the Twitter names.
Yep.
Maybe that'd be a good. Oh, okay. I'm gonna stop being obsessed with that. All right.
All right. Our levels are good. Everything sounds good.
Yeah, sounds fine to me. I mean, we'll see what
okay.
happens. I'm no
Turn
Brandon.
my volume up.
You're recording on your end. We got this recording.
Audio hijack is hijacking.
Okay, good. All right. Let me adjust this. All right. Is there someone like using a whisk in a metal pan in the background?
On the wall opposite me, someone's taking a shower.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
Like
Okay.
about 3 feet through this wall, I would just be like, "Yeah, just turn off your water here."
Well, people got to keep clean. Our kids haven't learned that yet. All right.
Yeah, well, it's kids getting ready for bed, so
Oh, that's nice.
yeah. Sorry. Hey, kids gotta be clean. Don't worry. The other that would be the COVID one. So she's the only one using that shower, so she'll be done soon.
I see. All right. Now I'm ready to start.
All right. Yeah, the rest of us have to shower downstairs, like all clumped together in the non-COVID bathroom.
All right. So when you're deep into studying rocks and
It's been a while.
geology, is it geology, right? Rocks,
Yeah.
things like that. I mean, I'm just going to summarize geology as rocks, which I know is inaccurate, but
Well, yeah, especially because I could have opted for the hydrogeology degree.
oh,
Water
now-
and rocks.
Water and rocks. Okay, now those are the 2 things I wanted to start with. So when you're deep into studying about rocks,
Yes.
Do you ever get to the point in the conversation or the thinking where you're like, why do rocks even exist?
Well, let me tell you, Coté, there's a lot of long field trips that go through some of the states with the legalized weed. And so maybe those conversations happened, but back when I was an undergrad, it was strictly legal stuff. And
Rocks only.
yeah,
Now,
rocks only,
now that
some
was
beers.
was my first my first reaction to this conversation in my head this morning was like, this is a typical have you ever looked at your hand situation. Really looked at it. But then I got to thinking, like, I mean, so the point of the question is like there are a certain category of objects that I feel like have to exist. Like there's no way they could not exist in the universe. Now there's another category of objects, and it's not so much that they are man-made objects, but they're just sort of like optional. Like, clownfish. Like clownfish don't have to exist. They just do exist, right? Whereas like I think another thing that you mentioned is like, is it the case that water has to exist? Like, I think it has to exist, or just like the whole universe doesn't work, right?
Well,
and so, and
I mean,
I think rocks
chemically it exists and it has to exist. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Or like if we're in the middle of space, right?
Okay.
You could be in the middle of space. Now, in theory,
No clownfish.
yeah, there's no clownfish. Clownfish are not required for existence, right? Totally optional, right? But I think if you are in space, rocks and water have to exist. You don't actually need air because, as we know, you can't breathe in space. Maybe there's just not sufficient oxygen for us to breathe in space. But like, I think air is optional.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. And there's just a bunch of chemicals. But yeah.
But I feel like if you didn't have water and rocks, existence would not exist. So those are required substances that must be in the universe. And not even in the universe, they must be in reality.
I don't know how to respond to that. I mean, okay, so you got your basic 3 states of matter. You got your, periodic table of chemicals. I'll grant you those things. Is that where we're going with this?
Are
you tripping on the idea that computers are just thinking sand?
That's right. No, but that's the point of the exercise is to even consider either the absurdity. Well, no, just to consider the marginal absurd nature of the question to kind of like have a perspective on and asking other questions. Like a similar question is the old, like, it's not even is life a simulation, because a simulation implies like, whatever, like that Rick and Morty episode where people just go down a chain of batteries and things like that, right? Like, so that, like, the problem with the simulation thinking is it's not interesting. It's just like, well, that we still have all the same problems and understanding of reality, because eventually it goes up to like the terminus. I mean, I guess you could say what would be interesting about like, what is it? Solipsism? Solipsistic?
Solipsism?
Yeah, like you could say that chain infinitely goes up and infinitely goes down, and then that would be something fun to contemplate, right? But if there is a terminus, there is an end, there is a bottom to the simulation universe and a top to the simulation universe, then on the top you're just like, oh, we got all the same issues. Like, we haven't actually solved anything. Like, we just have this absurd thing going down. Not interesting. Versus, like, if I were to say, what if rocks didn't exist? Like, we got a whole different ball game going there. Like, that's something there. Or if we introduce the concept of, like, again, I'm going to go back to it. I didn't think about it till I was asking about it. Is like, there must be a name for a category of, and I don't mean concepts, because the world of ideas is a whole other thing. But like, there must be a name for the category of things that can only exist. Like, it could never be, there is no universe or state of reality where these things do not exist. Versus clownfish, right? Like, you can imagine all sorts of states of reality and universes that were totally the same where clownfish don't exist. Like, clownfish is very optional.
I think you're either treading on the least popular Marvel What If, or that cross-listed geology philosophy department class that I didn't get to because I wasn't a graduate student. I never took philosophy of rocks.
Maybe that's what I'm asking. Is there a class called Philosophy of Rocks?
No, but I did take hydrogeology 421.
All right, that's a good stopping point. Let me see where. I don't even. What time do you have on your? I have no idea what time that is because I can't see. So whatever.
Yeah, I don't really know. You did all the talk. You did most of the talking with your cheerleader in the back.
Here, let's be quiet for like 10 seconds. All right, that's good. I can find that marker.
There was a yell in the background, and I think my daughter's brushing her teeth now.
Oh, good. So, you got electric toothbrush there or manual?
No, I can hear the sink running. It's moved from the shower to the sink.
I see. So let's see. Speaking of hot dog head explosion 36, we have Owen here. Saying, this is starting to sound like a line of an episode of the Infinite Monkey Cage. For a while after the Big Bang, there wasn't even atoms. It took a little while to cool. Yeah, see, there you go. Now that maybe that is like because I bet people spend a lot of time pondering what was before the Big Bang, right? And maybe that's what I'm asking is like, were there rocks before the Big Bang, right?
Yeah.
Because that would imply that rocks are optional, right? Like, however, it would start to beg the question of like, what is the time before the Big Bang? Like, what even is that? Like,
well, at least now I have our album art. So
if we or I was the watcher, and I went back before the Big Bang, like what would that be? Like what does that even look like? And I feel like I'm just gonna throw this out. I feel like the absurdity of like thinking there was a time before the Big Bang like points to some misunderstanding about the Big Bang. Like there can't be nothing before that. So there must be something. So maybe the Big Bang was not that big of a deal. It was just like,
I'm going to have to go with Spinal Tap here and just say there's too much bloody perspective.
Yeah. Philosophy of Rocks. 101.
101. Yes. Welcome incoming high school seniors. Let's go get stoned in the woods and talk about rocks.
But I did take hydrobiology.
Yeah, I took some fun ones.
What hydrobiology? What 379?
Sure. I took paleobiology. I took paleobotany. I took hydrogeology. I took a bunch of graduate level courses.
Paleobotany. I feel like that's who they send to the Antarctic to discover like the old alien like spaceship.
Well, botany's plants, right? So paleobiology would be like,
Oh, that would be, and then the guy is always like, I'm a botanist, not a biologist, and then like
why did we bring you?
Like the roughneck hard hat person is always like, oh, what's the difference? Plants and animals.
So they all burn.
They're gonna blow up just the same. And then the botanist will be like, well, there have been theories about plants that come alive, like a Venus flytrap. And
now you're getting. So there's your question, Coté. Does the thinking carpet planet have to exist?
That's right. Or is it optional? Maybe that should be the name of this episode: Clownfish are optional.
Either that or Philosophy of Rocks. I don't know.
Clownfish are optional. The subtitled "The Philosophy of Rocks."
Oh, this is what happens when Brandon's not here.
All right. Okay. Well, I saw that the United States Senate, not the Roman Senate of old, passed a bill, and it's the wording of this that I wanted to start talking about to figure out to keep to make daylight saving time permanent. Now, highly related to the idea of clownfish being optional. When I saw this headline, I was in my over analysis head, having too much perspective. I got confused because I was like, well, if you make daylight savings time permanent, there's only one time, so it's ridiculous to say that you've made it permanent. Because to say you've made it permanent implies that there is another option. But the whole point, I mean, the phrasing should be eliminate daylight savings time, right? Like, just eliminate the whole scheme of changing the time around. So it's not that you're making it permanent; you're just like flushing this whole idea.
But I think the thinking was standard time was the default, and when we are in saving time, that's what they do in the summer.
I see.
And they're making the summertime version permanent.
Oh, okay. So they are.
That's my thinking. That's my understanding.
Okay, now this makes sense because what they're doing is they are deciding on a seasonal time algorithm. No, wait, they're not even doing that.
They're getting rid of the algorithm.
The
algorithm was introduced to move it around in the summer, and they're like, actually, that's our new time.
Because I feel like it should just be like we're eliminating this time madness, right? Like we're just eliminating this. It's not so. I mean, it would almost be like let's imagine the era of prohibition, right? And let's say just for whatever reason, the federal government decided like okay, we're gonna have a week where alcohol is legal. And we call that Legal Week. And every year, there's Legal Week, right? And so if you were to say, okay, we're going to pass a bill to make Legal Week permanent, right? No, that wouldn't make sense. Instead, what you would say is we're going to repeal prohibition, right? So like you know, it'd be like I feel like this is the same sort of wording thing that someone really should have caught in the building. So maybe, I don't know if this is, I don't really understand what reconciliation is except some sort of dysfunctional thing, but maybe in reconciliation they can figure this out.
They'll come up with a better name.
Because
would they call it the Sunlight Savings Plan or something?
There's no name. It's just time. We
now
have time, right? Like time. It's just
I have
time.
given you time.
Because it's going to be confusing if someone says, so, okay, here's another scenario. If someone is like, okay, I am, I don't know, from Venezuela. I'm a programmer from Venezuela, and so I have to program the time part of this thing. How does time work in the States? And they'll say, oh, well, you know, in 2022, the Americans made daylight savings time permanent. And then I'm like, what does that mean? Right? Whereas if you're just like, no, they just use time. Right? Then you're like, okay, they use time.
Now the absolutist here is you're going for, you know, GMT or not GMT, UTC. UTC everywhere.
All I want is UTC plus time zones, right? Like and now after this, I know there's going to be a couple of senators who vote against this, but after this we're going to get rid of mountain time. Fuck mountain time. That doesn't make any sense, right? This mountain time is just very confusing.
Hey, you know, mountain time, that it makes sense though. You got the people in Colorado and El Paso.
I don't know.
But not Arizona. That's what makes it confusing. You got your Pacific time, and then you've got what you would think would be mountain time, and then there's Arizona sitting there like, no, we're not doing that.
I've got
part of the year they're on Colorado time, and part of the year they're on California time.
Yeah. Okay.
Pick a side.
I've got two comments here. One, I think we need to fill out a MacArthur Fellowship to establish the study of the philosophy of rocks and time. Right. I think these are two highly you use rocks.
I think that might have been like a Radiolab episode nobody liked.
Not all academic fields have to be widely liked. Like just the exploration of human knowledge does not only involve things that get a high number of Twitch views, right? Like sometimes it's very low. But I think you know the time and rocks are closely correlated because you use rocks to date things, yes. Right? Like it's the most reliable way to date things. I think, other than finding like, you know, an expired credit card in the fossil record, and so you kind of have an idea of yes, when that was
a calendar with all the dates marked off.
That's right.
We found that
and then a circle that says today.
Yes. Yes. The dinosaurs did not leave that for us.
But, so I think if we combine together the philosophy of rocks with the study of time, we could have a good school there. Okay, so that's my first thing. And now my second thing is I am going to argue that mountain time should be eliminated based on the following. Now, if you are, you know, if you're brought up as an American, all the lore and the thinking, what is, you know, a significant event in American history and culture is our cowboys and the West, right? Now, Colorado would say that they're part of the West, right?
Sure. Gateway to the West.
And so I feel like if we have Pacific time, that's also part of the West, right? And so like any state, and I don't know, we might be throwing Texas into here. I'm willing to compromise on this. I feel like any state, especially once you get into the like Billy the Kid like desert area of the Southwest and like that kind of line. And Colorado,
El Paso's mountain time.
It's very This is also troublesome. But like I feel like if you were featured in some kind of like cowboy movie with like an old town and like tumbleweeds, you are part of the West. And so therefore you should be following the Western time zone, which we call Pacific, instead of this mountain thing. Because no one was like, oh, in the old days with cowboys and Doc Holliday, they would be in the mountain. Like there's no mountain. It's just the West. So you have this whole time zone that's like the West time zone. And I think that'll cover us, and we don't really have to worry about it.
If we can't get away with everybody being in UTC, I say we go straight China style, one time zone, entire country.
Yeah. No, let's see. This is why we need this MacArthur Fellowship, because we could do like different permutations of it, and exactly.
See
here,
series of essays. And
here. Let's develop this out a little bit, and then we'll talk about computers at some point.
Yes,
which
I'm ready to talk about the computers any second.
We'll move to thinking sand, but I wanna just fill out our MacArthur Fellowship like thing here, and it is in two parts. It is like so what with social media nowadays, the attention of humanity has been too focused on the moment, the here and now, right? Whereas what we need to focus on are two levels of questions, which is one, the question of time and how not so much humans relate to time, but time in and of itself. Because if we can explore the true nature of time in a sort of practical, tactical way, how do we deal with time? We can kind of advance a lot of the thinking that we have. Because a lot of the longer term issues that we have, like climate change and other stuff, are because we don't have an appreciation of a long nature of time. So we need to rediscover time. And so this is where we can get into the notion of time zones and the elimination of mountain time, which we might be able to get some crazy, I forget, what are the name of the Koch brothers? Maybe we can get some Koch brother funding in. To kind of deal with mountain time, because think of they do a lot of mining operations that they used to.
Yeah.
And I bet there is a lot of productivity time that they spend on just dealing with mountain time, right? Like instead of it being something else.
Probably they run into logistical issues.
Right. Exactly.
And to circle back, I'm seeing a lot of people complaining about this. They're like, think of the poor software developers.
Exactly. And so I feel like we could go to the Koch brothers and be like, mountain time has caused you a lot of problems. Let's just eliminate it. Can I have $50 million for this foundation, right? We'll start off with the 50. We'll eventually get it. We'll double that, whatever. We'll get our ARR of 1 going there. Now, the second thing that we're going to consider, once we have this time thing figured out, this moves us into it primes the mind for a different type of thinking, and that is when we move to the philosophy of rocks. And the philosophy of rocks is the consideration of one, we theorize, our grand theory is that there are two categories of physical objects in the world. Again, we're not going to touch the realm of ideas. We'll leave that to Pascal and Berkeley, and maybe the other ones, but we theorize there are two categories of objects in the world. Those objects, those physical things that must exist, and those things that optionally exist. And it is by exploring this notion that we will again advance humanity. And our first question, as an example, also the Koch brothers may be interested in this, so we could get funding from them, or maybe Soros. He's the opposite of the Koch brothers, right? Maybe he would be interested. Although he makes his money off of pure ideas, like arbitrage and stuff. So he might be interested in the time aspect because time is involved in a lot of investment decisions. I'm not so sure about the philosophy of rocks. He may not be interested in that. He might want to diversify. I'm cracking myself up here into rock studies. But anyways, closing it out. The way we close this out is and I just want to leave you with it. We just want to leave, because you're involved in this too, Matt Ray. We just want to leave you with this. This may seem ponderous, but we ask you, does a clownfish need to exist?
No. There's so many tangents here. And the one that, you've got your whole quantum computing thing. You were almost towing the line to quantum computing, right? You've got your two states. It exists, it doesn't exist. And, I need to explore all the space at the same time. And the question, of course, is there actually any practical usage of this?
Oh,
but,
no, that's for the that's for the Peter Thiel Foundation to figure out. I think they're a lot more focused on practicalities of things.
Well, the practicalities of this DST stuff is, as a developer, you're probably not going to notice it because at this point you should be using a standardized library. It's their problem, right? Everybody is going to get the package update, and their operating system will be like, Indiana messed it up again, or and this time it'll just be like the U.S. moved things around. Like, time zones change multiple times a year. I mean, it's just like people are always, not just the U.S., but other countries are messing with theirs and moving them around, and like,
I think
deal.
There is something right in front of us. So the third part of the Institute of the Philosophy of Rocks. I think that's what we need to call it, right? The Institute. Let's see. The Institute for the Study of Time and Philosophy of Rocks. I think maybe I never remember what teleology versus ontology is, but maybe we can work those two words in there. I think that might be important as well. But I think so. There's a third part, which is, and back to the social and the kids. One of the first initiatives that we are doing is we are going to sponsor 3 people. Kind of like, and we won't reference, remember the biodome or whatever, that was a disaster. We're not going to reference that.
Yeah.
But we're gonna sponsor 3 people to live for a year on UTC time. They have to agree, and they've got to make notes that the only time they ever consider and work with is UTC. And let's just see how that works out. Now, obviously, for everyday use, they're going to have to convert. But they have to run their watch and their timekeeping system on UTC. And
isn't that just GMT for most people?
Well, I don't really know the difference, but whatever. This is why you need to be involved, Matt Ray, because you're more of the
and I think like most military people operate at that, and a lot of sysadmins, if you're running multinational stuff across time zones, you're like, all the computers are UTC. You deal.
Now, okay, see, this is that will give us a good start, but I just want to see, like, for a so-called normal,
for the normal person,
for a normal person, like how it affects their life. And it's not so much a study. Well, it's a study of 2 parts. The first part is just the practical nature of it, right? Like what errors. It's a chaos monkey of time. Put that in the proposal too, that phrase. and we're just discovering how we break the system if you only think in terms of UTC or GMT or whatever, right? And so that goes into the next years of research. When we go up, we get our 50 million, and we're going to add 20 million onto it as well from Soros and the Koch brothers, and maybe the NIST. Is that something? Maybe maybe some of the Australian science community. You can get us some funding. As well.
Oh, sure. I'm sure they're just floating in money for our ontology of teleology.
Am I misremembering? But didn't your wife work on grant writing at some point?
For public health stuff, yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Time is related to everything, Matt Ray. This is it's not optional. Time. Boom. There's the connection. The only thing we know for sure that is not optional is time. Or do we?
Good luck with this. Coté, you're killing me.
Oh man!
Usually you're the late night one with the glass of wine, and
Yep, it's morning Coté.
This is what happens when morning Coté's on his coffee.
See, I could do a Twitch streaming like this. This would be great. The Institute for the Study of Time and the Philosophy of Rocks.
Call it Coté time.
Yep. That would be great. The Philosophy of Rocks .plumbing.
.pizza.
All right.
All right. So now we're going to talk about developers.
Thinking sand.
Yes.
Thinking. Boy, I got to get those Google people on this. Thinking sand. All right. Well, speaking of thinking sand, I've been thinking a lot recently about. And after all, if we're all made of stardust, aren't we just a type of sand? Just squishy, wet sand. Is
Wet sand and water.
You know,
Back to that water.
I know we want to get to the computers, but just very briefly, Matt Ray, since you are highly educated in this field, what is like the definition of sand? What makes something sand versus dirt versus very small rocks?
All right. So I think dirt usually has a fair amount of organic material to it. So leaves and twigs and sticks that have been ground down, and then you got your worms going through there and eating stuff and whatnot. Sand is, I believe, a sizing of rock. So as the rocks go from boulders to pebbles to sand and down, it's about like the size. I don't think sand implies despite us calling it thinking sand, usually it's actually silicon, which is in a lot of sand, but not all sands. So sand doesn't necessarily have to be quartz.
So I think the answer is it's if I remember this term, it's sort of a category error, a categorization error. Is that like your question is irrelevant because of bird hair, but whatever. But it's also like because sand is really just small rocks, and the word sand is a word like pebble. Like we all agree that pebbles are a type of rocks, and sand is just a type of very small rocks. There you go.
And so your sand, that doesn't necessarily imply what the sand is made of. So you go to Hawaii, you got your black sand beaches, your green sand beaches.
Right. It's strictly measurement. That's all sand is.
Okay. And white sands, New Mexico, it's gypsum.
Gypsum. Oh, who knew?
I did.
All right. All right. So here's something I've been contemplating, as you can imagine, with the place that I work and things that I'm interested in, is I've been trying to think of some recent, which is to say contemporaneous, examples of the business models for, I don't know how to phrase this, but developer-led sales of, to make it very...
B to D?
Yeah. To make it very specific of what I am going to call on-premise software or on-premises. If like me, you're like, fuck all that on-premise pedantry, right? So like, and what do I mean by that? I mean that it's pretty easy to comprehend and figure out if you have a SaaS from a developer perspective. What I think Gartner used to call a SaaS, an application software as a service, or maybe it was AP, whatever it was, or just like public cloud, right? Like if it's public cloud or a SaaS, and you have an individual developer and they go sign up with a credit card or they use the free tier, like no problem. We got that going on. Yeah. Product-led marketing, you got your Slack, your Twilio, what the fuck ever, right? Like cool. But like what I was struggling to think of, and I think I know some examples, but I don't know the details of how they operate, is that if your developer literally has to download software and install it on it. Now, there is the open core model, right? Because the other thing I want to eliminate is I'm not talking about open source software. I'm talking about eventually money changes hands. Now, I specifically said I didn't say who spends the money, right? Because that's the second part that I'm leading up to. But like eventually, because the developer downloaded and installed this thing, money changes hands, and probably a significant amount of money. Now, this is the business, the basic way of operating for many companies, including the one that I work on. So I'm very interested. I shouldn't say work in. I'm very interested in exploring like examples of how that works. And then just to stop, right? Like to hand it over to you, I think that HashiCorp and GitLab are examples of this business model. Developer downloads something, installs it on their laptop, or let's just say on premises. For a developer, their laptop can be the premise. The premises? whatever. So that could be the on-premises, but they install it and manage it. And then eventually, I know I'm repeating myself, eventually it becomes a core part of how that organization works, and money changes hands. It is paid for, right? And this is, I think this is, that model, I think is the whole like Red Monk developer or the new Kingmakers, like developer blah, blah, blah led stuff. And so I just wanted to contemplate the sales, the strategy, the operations of businesses that actually follow that model.
Well, I mean, when you have this, developer-led sales motion is kind of what we're getting at is, there's still, I can assure you Hashi, and GitLab and others have an enterprise sales team. But
of course.
Yeah, but what your real goal is to get that organic upwelling of sales where, developers go, they make probably an informed decision, and they start using it, they put it in production, and it gets decided that it needs to be paid for. As opposed to enterprise sales comes in, makes a presentation, rah-rahs a bunch of people, and then by fiat it's handed down to the team, and this is the new tool that you all use.
Right. Now can I, I'm going to interject here because I think you have outlined two very important lines of thought. One of them is the metaphor breaks down pretty quickly, but what I call the janitor strategy. And the janitor strategy, very generally, is that like your effort as a company selling something is to, and I'm going to put it in the passive voice again, but I'll do it, is to have the developers create a mess, right? And the developers go in and they just like create a mess of governance and stuff, and then you come in and you sell the janitorial services of cleaning up that mess.
Straighten it up and show them how to do it right.
Right. Reapplying governance, centralizing things, having one bill, and the janitors there are often operations people. I mean, operations, whatever. They're often not the application developers.
They're not the people who chose the mess to make.
Because
the ones with the buckets.
Because much like my kids, developers don't want to clean up their room, right? They're like, I know where everything is. This actually is organized.
This mess is what I wanted.
So you have the janitorial model, right? Now, in that model, your effort as an organization is to encourage the developers to make a mess with your stuff, right? You're like, I want you to use my stuff to make a mess. And then on the other end, you come in and you go to the enterprise architects and the ops people, maybe even the security people, and you're like, whoa, your developers have a messy room. Would you like to hire some janitorial services to come clean that up? So you got that.
Well, but the real motion here is the sales motion cleanup or selling them on like, hey, wouldn't you like to have your developers be put in a clean room where they can work?
Right. Okay. Hold on. That's the second one. That's the second one. So exactly. So there, I think there's an in-between, a variation of the janitor model, because and let's call it the Mary Poppins model. And the Mary Poppins model is that your kids are a mess. They have the mess in the room. First, we're going to clean the room, and then we're going to retrain the developers to like stop messing up their room. And they're going to have a nanny. They're going to have a Mary Poppins, who's all going to be fun. And you got Dick Van Dyke. It's going to be enjoyable because developers can't stand to be adults, right? I'm only making fun of developers because I myself was an application developer, so whatever. And so so you kind of you do the spoonful of sugar routine. You get the developers to mature,
sing along and dance, and by the time they're done, everything's spick and span, and the sweeps out of business.
Because Mary Poppins, very disciplined and strict, but also super fun. Right?
Yeah.
Like she makes cleaning the room fun.
Who doesn't like Mary Poppins?
So that's your intermediate thing. And I think what you're getting to was the second, now third model, which is, let's call it the a priori janitorial model, which is, what if you had a centralized thing? You had the clean room and you put the developers in it, and you have constructed this clean room and it is impossible for them to create a mess. Right? Now, I think this is often called, establishing guardrails and governance, right? And what you do here is you go to whoever the janitors are, and I'm just going to say the operations people, but I think it's basically like a side conversation is to ponder at some point, what's the deal with enterprise architects nowadays? But let's ignore that topic for now. I had a fun talk about 3 years ago where I explored this thing and like, who the fuck knows, right? Like, but so whoever the janitors are, and the janitors are the one that as a vendor who you sell to the janitors, right? I mean, you sell to the janitor's boss's boss, but whatever. You sell to the janitor organization.
Man, these powerful janitors.
The powerful janitors. Clownfish are optional. And so you go to the janitors and you're like, okay, before the developers even start, you're going to buy into this system that we have that makes it impossible for them to make a mess, and then you don't have to go and clean it up.
Yep.
Right. And
the walls are going to be like rubberized, and you can just hose them down when they
exactly.
come out.
Like I was in London yesterday for an event, and I saw two different signs on walls. The first one, totally normal, right, was that it said, this wall. I love going to London because it's like, oh right, everyone speaks English here. I mean, everyone speaks English here, but like everything is in English. Let me put it that way, and so it's easier. However, of course, there are some people who are speaking English, and I still don't know what they're saying. But
I get that.
Yeah, that's no problem. Because you can just say, "What?"
Huh?
But and one of the signs said, this wall is covered in anti-graffiti paint or something like that. Now, sure, that's fine. And to your point, I saw another sign that said, this wall is covered in anti-climbing paint, and I was like, what does that mean? Anti-climbing? I guess.
Did you try?
I guess it's slippery even when not wet. Is what's going on there? Anyhow, so I think those are the three models that you follow. Well, I guess there's a fourth model, which I would call let's call it like the IDE model, which is just like developers directly buy a tool, right? They just directly buy JetBrains, right? And there's there's no janitor involved in JetBrains, right? Like but
that is the janitorial model, right? You're giving them the tools. I mean, you're letting them use it, and other people are like, well, I guess I'll make a mess that way too. And
okay.
There's, I don't know. To me, like selling to developers is the janitorial model, right? Eventually, someone's going to have to come in and clean up the mess by showing them how to do it right, training everyone else to use the same tools, standardizing it across the board. I mean, unless if your goal is to get lots of people to use it, you probably need to have that. Here's a bunch of rope. Go play with it. Right. And, eventually someone will get hurt. But that's what, to me, that janitorial model is like, give them enough rope to go mess things up, give them enough, bullets.
So, okay.
Apparently we're playing with some dangerous toys here.
Let's go through the rope and the bullets and the janitors and the clownfish here. Don't worry, Matt Ray. We're not going to go back to clownfish. Every
Let's not go back to rocks.
We've submitted that application to the MacArthur Fellowship. We've got to wait to hear back from them.
Right? Any day now.
Yeah, any day now. First, we'd have to send it to them, but let's assume that they are listening into this and they're just like, oh, let's consider this one, and also maybe if your wife can submit it to some public health agencies, we might get something there. Yeah. So, and so. I think what so now let's bring in our knowledge, which is to say your knowledge of Chef, maybe a little bit of trigger mesh thinking, and then also like GitLab and HashiCorp. And let's ask, we don't have to go to each of them, but are all of these basically following a janitorial model?
They started there, right?
Or is there a different model? Or do they shift around to the other ones? How do they do it?
Right? And I think Chef's a great example of that. I mean, the first several years of Chef, it was, open source tool, and, the sales team didn't have a standard script. So like what they would come in, they'd, drop into somebody who was, 90% of the time already using the product, because it was open source. They could go grab it. They could play with it. And so, the sales model was like, well, let's see how we can convince them to pay for, this stuff, and it was a little sloppy, right? And then later they got more prescriptive, and they're like, look, we're going to show you the right way to do things, and we're going to have to take some firmer opinions about, like, the proper way to hold your broom. And you know you might have gotten this far without it, but our patterns are better, and let us help you. And then later they started moving up they wanted bigger deals, right? They wanted to sell to, they didn't want to sell to managers. They wanted to sell to
To use
VPs.
the old, they wanted to go up the elevator, not down
Exactly,
the
right?
elevator.
And
Gotcha.
that meant they needed to have a more prescriptive model. They
Uh-huh.
needed to have um, something that could be dropped into a lot of people, right? It wasn't just like, oh, we're gonna, because when we were doing config
Right, right, right,
management,
right.
that was very, you know, you had to work each department because everybody had different problems or whatever. But towards the end of Chef's, tenure, they were doing compliance. And with compliance, you weren't selling to individual developers. Developers don't care about compliance, right? That's not their problem.
Yeah.
But your CISO, your CTO, CFO, those people care, and they're writing bigger checks. And so we could come to them and say, like, look, we have this great tool that does compliance, and we're happy to train your security people. We're happy to train your developers. We'll train anybody and everybody because this
This
crosses all those boundaries.
I want to suggest this is the Mary Poppins model.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Right,
This is
right.
the Mary
Okay.
Poppins model, where we're going to get the people singing and dancing some show tunes, and we're all going to have to do it, right? It's not going to be just one developer gets to do some compliance over there,
Yeah, yeah.
and he's happy. You have to bring it into more people,
Right.
and probably, and I'm more than a year away from it, so I don't know what they're up to these days. But eventually the goal, of course, was to get more packaged content, more stronger opinions, where somebody would be like, I'm going to hit these check boxes, and it's going to give me the compliance, and it's just going to give me the results. And that's even farther away from the janitorial mode. Somebody's
Yes.
literally going to, like, click on the compliance things they want tested, and they'll get some results. And it's not exactly DevOps anymore. It's just like, I'm buying this transactional model. And that's not the Mary Poppins model anymore either, right? That's somebody did most of the work for me, and I'm just consuming it. And I don't know, we need a good name for that, but yeah, I mean, they made that transition from the janitorial, everybody adopt it, we'll sort it out, we'll help you clean up your messes, to hey, we're going to have to be more prescriptive,
Uh-huh.
and you're going to have a lot more people adopting this at once. And and their goal was to get just click and consume, um which was less Mary Poppins and more
Now, okay.
yeah
So we can complete this out.
yeah
I want to explore more that fourth one, which we could call click and consume. But you said a lot there that I didn't quite like. I didn't fully understand whatever depth you were talking about, which was eventually you get to the point where there's a checkbox that you do,
mm-hmm.
and that is not the Mary Poppins model. So what is
No.
what is this checkbox thing you're talking about? Let's talk more about that.
Well, with the Mary Poppins model, it was hey, if you do things our way, we can bring in your content, and the spoonful of sugar all goes down or whatever, and we can sort out your problems together, and we've got some good models, and we'll do this together. And then farther down the line is like, look, you don't actually want to do anything with us, you don't want to train up your team, you just want the results, right? And so
Right.
rather than have to become expert users of the tool, they just wanted to say, like, look, I know I need PCI DSS compliance, can you give it to me? And be like,
Okay.
yes, I
Okay.
can.
So in this model is not the a priori janitorial model, otherwise known as the clean room model, right?
Yeah.
We should find another name, because clean room implies like legal IP theft. Basically, is I think more of what a clean room is. But basically, let's call it like janitorial guardrails. Let me put that in there. janitorial or maybe we call it the graffiti-proof paint. Graffiti-proof paint model. Okay. And so in that model, you still involve the developers and the janitor, so to speak, the person you're selling to, is still working with and involved in trying to change how the way developers work. And the way they're doing that is instead of cleaning up their mess, they're trying to create an environment for janitors to for developers to prosper.
Yeah, that's kind of the intermediate step where like, look, if everybody used the same IDE and we did like, Git pods and everything, everything was on, VNC or not VNC, remote terminals, nobody could mess things up. That's kind of that model. And then the final model is, why do we have a bunch of developers and ops people? Can't I just buy things that are already compliant?
Right. So the fourth model, now the characteristic of the fourth model is that
it's a pure consumption model.
You both hold on. You both do not ever worry about or think about developers, like Don Draper in the elevator with that guy. You just never even think about developers. And also, you basically are just like an external observer to make sure that things are compliant, right? So like you buy a tool that says, I can't quite word this out, but you buy a tool that observes some other process and says, is this process doing what I want?
Yeah.
Right. Like
I can't be bothered to train my staff on a bunch of tools. Can I just have compliance? And they would say, yeah, we'll sell you that.
Right. And then there's a deeper version of this model that gets into outsourcing, which is like, why do I even have developers? Right. So why don't I just outsource that to someone? I don't know. I think we got to work on this fourth one a little bit, because I understand with compliance what it gets to, right? You're basically
right.
It's just a tool sell to like, it's like traditional operations where the traditional operations doesn't really care about developers. They're just given something and they need to make dashboards and know when to push the reset button on it. I mean, I kid, right? Like that's like, I think.
But yeah, it's definitely still like a manufacturing model, right? At the bottom, you've got, your artisanal hand-built stuff. And, the opposite end is like, hey, I click on this link and Walmart or Amazon, delivers it to me. And I never had to know how to, I didn't go through these steps of like getting better and better tools and becoming a better craftsman and buying my own wood shop and buying, replacing my, $2 hammer with a $14 hammer. I never went through the steps of becoming a craftsman or anything. I was just like, look, I can't be bothered. I just want to consume.
So okay, I want to throw this out, and then I think this will bring us back to out of the theoretic world of rocks and clownfish, back into I think there's a couple of, we could talk about like GitLab and HashiCorp and maybe like Dell's recent developer stuff in relation to this, and that is, I think maybe this fourth model is the developers are not involved in this model. Right? Like there's just no and therefore it's
the developers didn't want to think about compliance anyway.
Right.
So we took them out. We tried to give it to them. We tried to teach them. We had the sing along. I went to I played some golf. I had some fancy dinners, and at the end of the day, I decided, what, screw those guys. I'm just going to do it myself.
And this fourth model is still part of this IEEE paper that we're writing here in Matt Ray. But the fourth part, we only mention this fourth model to show that there are models that in no way involve developers. So if you as a business are following this fourth model, you don't need to worry about developers. Just like that doesn't ever come up. Like, not a big deal, right? Like it's not involved.
Yeah. They're going to be places you pick. And I think that's the goal. Right. The goal is to have as little friction and interaction with your customers as you can. Because if you can get that, it's purely transactional. Like, I don't actually have to go in and do professional services or training or anything. I can just sell you a widget. That's pretty awesome. And then if you kind of think about it, you're back at selling direct tools again.
That's true. That's true. Like what, the ideal, I think the ideal sale as far as productivity, which is to say the time it takes you versus the amount of money that you make is probably selling directly to the consumer who has the money. Selling directly to the person who uses the thing that has the money to pay for it, right? Because then you don't have to do this roundabout thing of like ROI and, so the VP of whoever's buying the stuff just like makes someone else use it. So it's always good to actually sell to the person who has the money and uses the tool, which is not usually the way enterprise software is sold, but that's kind of like the baseline models. Okay, so if we were with the collective knowledge that we have, which on my part is very little, of like how HashiCorp and GitLab works, does it follow the Janitor model? Is that what is that the developer-led way that they do things, where essentially? And I'm putting this in jokey, like negative stuff, right? Like there's a positive way of putting it. But if I were to go and talk to the GitLab and the HashiCorp kind of sales strategy business people, and I was like, I think what you do is you encourage the developer world as a whole to use as many of your tools in their own way possible, and you want to spread that usage like kudzu, like an invasive species, throughout their organization. And then you probably have a good sense of downloads for organizations like, Mid-Eastern Warm Smiles Insurance Company has downloaded a lot of these different things, and you can track that developers in there are actively using it. So you should have your reps go to, we'll call it Smiles for short, so I don't have to say Mid-Eastern Warm Smiles Insurance Corporation. But so you go to Smiles and you're like, boy, looks like you got a mess there. And you may not say it that way, but that's basically the way of saying it. And you're offering the janitorial and maybe even the Mary Poppins services. In there. And then that is the core of the business for maybe
early. At first, it started that way, right?
Right.
And as they got the adoption, as the messes spread like wildfire, and there's just filthy Terraform deployments everywhere, they started saying, "Hey, you know what? These messes are getting kind of annoying. Wouldn't you like a hosted version, right? Wouldn't you like somebody to do some sanity checking?" And then you turn around to the enterprise like, "Would you like some?" Maybe you don't let them do these things to production, and you throw some guardrails around here, and I could sell you those things. And you're like, and if you hum along, it's the Mary Poppins model, right? And if you keep moving up the thing, it's like, oh, now it's a SaaS. Now, I haven't had to like become an expert in every aspect of the tool. My messes are smaller. My visibility is better. And then, eventually their goal will be like, check it out. Eventually, you're just going to consume this thing as a consumption-based service, and you'll pay by the deployment. Or some model where they can get really transactional on consumption. So instead of being like, well, we're going to have this site license and ARR, they'll be like, you use the tool this much, you pay this much. And that's the goal for everybody. Everybody wants to be, EC2, charged by the hour, charged by the millisecond, whatever, and you have as little interaction with your customers as possible. So that's the goal for developer sales.
Hold on, my son needs to be at school in 15 minutes, and I think my wife is asleep. So let me.
Okay, well that was I tried to come up with
I know.
We're done.
You were you were great. So did you eat breakfast?
Yeah, but is there lunch in my bag?
There's not lunch in your bag. Can you buy lunch at school?
Well, only with a credit card.
Well, can you use cash?
No.
But I gave you like euros a couple weeks ago to buy stuff at school, right?
I know, but that's to. I can pay other people to buy.
Oh. Are you ready to go to school? You're all fully ready to go? Okay. Here's what
we can wrap this up in 5 minutes. Yeah.
No, I mean he's got to go. Like, here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna give you this, and you should. Do they have like a tap to pay thing? You should be able to just tap to pay, and not have to know the PIN code. But if that doesn't work, can you remember the numbers?
There you go. Muted. Read his lips. Read his lips, streamers. He's giving out his pin. I can't read his lips. Oh, he's off camera.
Here, now you can hear my narration. Let me, here we go, Cormac. Are you looking for a piece of paper?
Yeah.
Just 9284. Now I'm going to have to go change my pin on everything.
What?
9284. Now, when you use this card, there's two ways to use it. Like, you can just touch it, like hold it on top of the machine, and hopefully that'll work, and you don't have to worry about it. It'll just pay for stuff. But if you have to enter a pin, this is the pin number, right? So you enter and it's like, give me the pin, and you say 9284. Okay, and if that doesn't work, here's 20 euros, and get your friends to buy something for you and pay them back.
No.
Okay?
Yeah.
Are you gonna go get on your bike and get there? All right, good job.
Wife's asking if we're done.
All right. Do we need to wrap up? So we had a pause.
Yeah.
We had
I
everything
think we
covered.
needed to wrap
Yep,
up anyway.
Yep. Okay, sounds good. Let me. Phew. Well, we didn't discuss if Dell should pay attention to developers, but that's fine. All right.
Yeah. We
got it.
got to the philosophy of rocks.
I'm
and
glad.
hit it hard.
Hey, like a rock. I'm glad we got down on the record the janitorial model and the Mary Poppins model.
Yes,
I think there is lots of discussion of.
I like the janitorial model. Yes,
I think there's lots of discussion of developers are the kingmakers, but there is very little discussion of developers are the money people. You know, or what's the try to? There's very little discussion of developers are the ones that cause you to make money. Boy, that's shitty.
I think the real lesson here is enterprise sales is really just janitorial sales.
Yeah. Kiss your janitor. All right. Well, Brandon's not here, so I'm going to cover the bureaucracy. But I'm not sure if we have any bureaucracy to cover. Thanks for everyone who has told us things and done stuff since last episode. Now, we do have a Slack channel. If you go to softwaredefinedtalk.com, you should go in there and check it out, all sorts of things. And if you want Brandon to send you stickers anywhere in the world where they are sendable, you can send your mailing address. That's key. Your name might be good too. I guess he could make up a name. But send your name.
Make up a name.
Your name and mailing address to stickers@softwaredefinedtalk.com, and we'll send you some stickers. The only other thing to mention is if you go to the show notes, which is at softwaredefinedtalk.com/349, where this year we're thinking of doing some meetups here and there. I don't really know exactly what we'll be doing, but you can sign up to get invited to future meetups that we'll have, which I think would be enjoyable. Now, there are several conferences coming up. At the end of this month, March 30th, that's March, not the other M month. There's only 2 M months in the year, right?
Yeah, that's right.
You got 2 J
March
months.
and May.
There should be a list of months whose first letter occurs twice in the year. You got June, July, March, May, January. Boy, J's the king of the first letters of months. Anyways, at the end of March 30th to 31st is the .NET Beyond Conference, which will be streamed for free in Twitch. And you can go to the show notes to find a link to that. There's also that conference over there in Round Rock, March 23rd to 36th. We got all sorts of other conferences, lots of DevOps Days you should check out. I'm actually going to be at DevOps Days Austin, May 4th and 5th. I'm looking forward to that. And at the end of April, we have a spring tour in Chicago, which I'll be at, which I should really figure out the dates for that. So it's the last week of April. And then finally, we have Spring One Platform, San Francisco, December 6th to 8th. I'm probably going to be there unless something weird happens.
Yep.
So check that out as well. Now with that, Matt Ray, what do you have to recommend this week?
Well, my recommendation for this week is a couple episodes ago we talked about the Kubernetes documentary. We gave our critiques of the crane shots or the drone shots of the Amazon building, and how they went through it. The Kubernetes podcast, episode 170. They actually interviewed the director. And he gave a lot of behind the scenes stuff about how it was made. It was actually really interesting. How there's this recruiting ish company that they're using the commercials or using the documentaries as kind of like brand awareness, and they're getting a lot of views. And since we talked about it, if you enjoyed watching it, really good behind the scenes content. So the Kubernetes podcast is in my list of things to listen to, and not everyone is as as light as this one, but definitely check it out.
As hard hitting as this.
Well, some of them, I mean, obviously it's Kubernetes, it's exciting stuff. So they might.
Oh, you mean as light as this episode? I thought you were referencing our Philosophy of Rocks commentary.
Dude, I've left the rocks behind.
No more rocks.
No more rocks, man. I changed majors.
So, did they cover why there's no one from Amazon interviewed in it? Does that come up?
A little bit. Yeah. I mean, he definitely acknowledged that they needed to set up a conflict of sorts, and the boogeyman, and
Ooh.
he talked about some of the dramatic devices that they used.
So he was like, we kept inviting people from Amazon, but they refused to let us make them up like Pennywise. They just said and so that's why we didn't. That was the only way narratively it would fit the story. I couldn't go back and redo the storyboards. Are you crazy?
No.
This is some Jardowski level storyboarding that we were doing. So we got to, we hired the makeup person already. Yeah, I see. Well, my recommendation when I was in London. Well, first of all, it's such a delight to do some work travel again. I was a little nervous. I had to figure out. It was very ambiguous. It turns out it wasn't ambiguous at all, but I wasn't quite sure if I needed a self-test to get back into the Netherlands. But I did, and I think they're going to lift that on March 23rd. And also, you don't
just
have to do
in time
it.
for another outbreak.
Yeah, that's right. You don't have to do it. You only have to do it if you go outside of the EU and the Schengen zone, or however you say it. So since I was going to the UK, I had to do it. But whatever, that's fine. So that's fun. But while I was in London, I just was walking somewhere, and there was an Amazon Fresh store, one of these stores that has no checkout clerks. You just walk in and pick out your stuff and walk out. Now, what they don't tell you, I mean, obviously, is that you have to configure your Amazon app correctly so that you can scan a QR code. And
so there's some dude who has to hang out by the entrance and make sure that you've got your.
In this case, it was a very helpful dudette, but that was fine. And but if I wasn't in the weird international traveling mode that I'm in, it would have been totally fine, because my issue was that I live in the Netherlands, and I probably should switch over to the Netherlands Amazon maybe after this year when they beef it up. But the German Amazon is the one that you order from around here because it's better. And so I'm set up in the app to use the German Amazon. So I needed to switch over to the UK Amazon app. And I used to know how to do that in the app, but they rearranged it. So I had to have her help me out.
I can show you.
Yeah. I mean, it used to be very simple, but I had to have her show me where it was. It's really stupid. Like there's a screen that is the different subcategory shops, and for some reason you go to that screen and you scroll all the way to the bottom, and then you can change the flag to be which country you're in.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. So I changed it over to the UK, and then you've got to select a payment method, and then you have to wait for the app to refresh because it's probably like some serverless thing that has eventual consistency before it offers you the code that you can use. So she had to go in and search for Amazon Fresh code. Boom, then we found it. So once you're set up, and again, if I was actually a UK resident and I didn't have to go through all that, it would have been totally fine. But of course, being Amazon, they don't have a normal QR code. They spin the QR code. Is that 45 degrees? So it's a diamond, basically.
Really?
Yes, whatever. And then you scan that in, but then it really is exactly what it says. And there's a twist ending that I think you'll enjoy. You walk in, and only if you look up will you see the
Places crawling with cameras.
The ceiling,
Yeah.
basically, like if you imagine that you had speaking of sand, you had cameras that were glitter, and you covered the ceiling in glitter. And it's not that bad,
my
but there's
gosh.
cameras everywhere. But you go in and you just pick up stuff, and then you don't even scan out. You just walk out.
Yeah.
And then you get a message. Now, what was awesome is I bought some PG tips because I figured, buy some English shit.
When in UK, yeah.
Yeah, and I also bought some lime or cucumber water, and I also bought some gum. But then when I walked, it was about £5. When I walked out, there was a promo going on to that store, totally free. It was $5.55 quid sterling. I don't know what the fuck you say. But then there was a $5.55 promotion. Walked out totally free. It was awesome. So.
Or maybe the app just was broken, and they're like, just let them go.
Yeah, that could be. But it was the. I know that this is an Amazon principle that comes from like customer delight, but I think they should enshrine in their principles that if there's a problem, just refund the money. Because I think that is kind of a core, maybe not in AWS, I don't have experience there, but on the retail side, I think that's a core Amazon thing. It's just like,
I think on AWS, like, you're like, oh, my account got hacked. They're like, fine, we won't charge you 80 grand. Right?
Yeah,
they generally have a fairly decent reputation about hacking kind of stuff or, weird things like that. But then other times they're like, hey, you signed up for that EC2 instance. You let it run for a month. Not our problem, right?
Yeah, I think maybe to use old guy Java terminology, when an exception is thrown, you go through all these catchings of exceptions, and eventually you get down to just like, fuck if I know. And you don't know what it is. And I think at that point in Amazon, there's a refund money to customer exception that you just throw, but only on the retail side, as far as I know. Well, speaking of being on the retail side, totally unrelated to that, this has been Software Defined Talk. If you want to get the show notes for this episode, you can go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/349. We'll try to keep you updated on that MacArthur Fellowship acceptance there. We might need to start up a new podcast. But you can, once we do get accepted, which I'm sure will happen, we'll announce it on the general channel in our Slack, which you can also join if you go to softwaredefinedtalk.com and hang out with us between episodes and, tell us what you think about rocks. And if they have to exist
or don't.
And that, here's what I want you to do. I want you to if you want to talk about rocks, add the hash code RockTalk, so that Matt Ray can filter it out. He's gonna put put the RockTalk hashtag on his code. All right. All right. With that, bye bye.
Goodbye.